High Admiral Zara Vex of the Meridian Empire stood motionless before the quantum display, her iridescent scales dulling with each passing moment as she watched the feed from their furthest outpost. The darkness at the edge of known space wasn't empty anymore. Something ancient stirred there, something that shouldn't exist. "Play it again," she commanded, her multifaceted eyes fixed on the screen. The recording showed the same horrifying scene. An entire Meridian battle fleet, among the finest in the known galaxy, disappearing into what could only be described as living darkness. No weapons, no dramatic explosions, just silence, and then nothing. "That's the third fleet this cycle," Admiral, her second in command, Commander Nex, reported. His usual stoic demeanor cracked slightly as he added, "The entity is growing. Our calculations suggest it will reach the core worlds within 6 standard months." The Meridian Empire had stood for 10,000 years, spreading across 17,000 star systems. They had faced wars, plagues, and cosmic disasters. But this was different. This entity defied their most advanced science, ignored their strongest weapons, and seemed to feed on their most powerful energy sources. "The Council of Elders is waiting, Admiral," Nex reminded her gently. "They need your assessment." Zara's inner membranes flickered, a sign of deep distress among her species. The council chamber materialized around her as the quantum telepresence activated, connecting her to the 12 most powerful beings in the Empire. Ancient faces, weathered by centuries of rule, all turned to her expectantly. "Honored elders," she began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "The threat we face cannot be defeated by conventional means. Our weapons pass through it as if it were smoke, yet it consumes matter and energy like a starving predator. It's not just killing our people, it's erasing them from existence." The council chamber erupted in worried whispers. Elder Mox, his scales bearing the deep blue of 10 centuries, raised a gnarled hand for silence. "What do you propose, Admiral? Surely the greatest empire in known space has options." Zara took a deep breath. What she was about to suggest would shake the foundations of their society. "There is one option, but you won't like it." She gestured, and a new hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, a small blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Earth. The reaction was immediate and violent. Several elders rose from their seats, their scales flashing warning colors. Elder Mox's voice cut through the chaos. "The Death World. The planet we quarantined centuries ago. Have you lost your mind, Admiral?" "I haven't," Zara replied firmly. "Consider the facts. Every species we know of evolved on worlds with gravity between 0.8 and 1.2 standard units. Except humans. They evolved on a death world with 1.6 times standard gravity. Every species we know developed spaceflight after achieving global peace. Humans? They went to their moon while still pointing nuclear weapons at each other." She continued, her voice growing stronger. "We quarantined them because they were too dangerous, too unpredictable. But now we need dangerous. We need unpredictable. We need a species that looked at the impossible and said, 'Watch me.'" Elder Mox's scales had shifted to a thoughtful green. "You're suggesting we ask for help from a species that turned their own planet's deadliest predator into a companion animal. A species that developed faster than light travel not through careful research, but because someone said it couldn't be done." "Yes," Zara replied simply. "Because they're also the only species we know of that thrives on solving impossible problems. Their entire history is filled with moments where they should have gone extinct, and instead they came back stronger." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Elder Mox spoke again. "The quarantine has been in place for 3 centuries. We don't even know if they survived their own violent nature." Zara activated another hologram, showing recent long-range scans of Earth's solar system. The council gasped collectively. The humans hadn't just survived, they had transformed their entire system. Massive space stations orbited every planet. Ships of impossible designs moved between them with casual ease. And there, hidden in the asteroid belt, was something that made even Zora's scales pale. The largest shipyards any of them had ever seen. "They've been busy," she said quietly. "And if our calculations are correct, they've developed technology we can't even understand. Not because we're not intelligent enough, but because we don't think the way they do." Elder Mox settled back in his chair, his scales now showing the deep purple of decision. The human quarantine was put in place because we feared what they might become. Now we must face an even more frightening question. What if we need exactly what they have become? Zara nodded. "Exactly, honored elder. We feared they were too dangerous to be let loose in the galaxy. But now we need dangerous. We need the species that looked at their planet's apex predators and thought, 'I can pet that.' We need the people who saw the void between stars and said, 'I can cross that.' We need the civilization that faced extinction-level events multiple times and treated them as inspiration for their entertainment." The council chamber erupted in discussion again, but Zara could see it in their scale colors. They were convinced. Humanity's quarantine would end, not with the bang everyone had feared, but with a desperate plea for help. As the council drafted their message, Zara wondered what humanity would make of it all. Would they help? Would they laugh? Or would they do what humans seem to do best? Prove that impossible was just another word for hasn't been done yet. The Meridian diplomatic vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull reflecting the distant sunlight. Admiral Zara Vex stood on the bridge, watching as the legendary Death World and its star system came into full view. What she saw made her inner membranes flutter in disbelief. The quarantine beacons their empire had placed centuries ago were still there, but they were now just historical curiosities, surrounded by human observation posts. The humans hadn't just ignored the quarantine. They had turned the warning buoys into museum pieces. Multiple contacts approaching, her sensor officer reported, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. Human vessels. They're massive. Zara watched as the ships appeared on their screens. The Meridian Empire prided itself on elegant design, their ships smooth and crystalline. These human vessels were different, all sharp angles and exposed weapon systems, wearing their lethality like badges of honor. The largest was easily twice the size of their diplomatic vessel. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Lyra announced. "Audio and visual." "Put it through," Zara ordered, straightening her posture. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the human female in a dark uniform adorned with gold insignia. Her skin was a shade Zora hadn't expected, darker than the historical records showed, and her eyes held a sharp intelligence that made the Admiral's scales ripple. "Meridian vessel, this is Fleet Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You're the first aliens to openly approach Earth in 300 years. I assume you have a good reason." Zara noticed something in the human's tone, not hostility, but almost amusement, as if they'd been waiting for this moment. "Fleet Admiral Chen, I am High Admiral Zara Vex of the Meridian Empire. We come seeking humanity's assistance with a threat that could destroy all known civilization." Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Interesting. The same empire that quarantined Earth 3 centuries ago now comes asking for help. The Council of Admirals will want to hear this directly. "Follow our escort to Luna Base. Transmitting coordinates now." The transmission ended, leaving Zara to contemplate the implications. The humans hadn't just survived. They had thrived. And they remembered who would try to cage them. As their ship followed the human escort deeper into the system, Zara's crew stared in awe at what humanity had built. Mars was now clearly terraformed, its surface gleaming with cities under massive environmental domes. The asteroid belt had been transformed into a vast industrial complex, with ships and stations everywhere they looked. "Admiral," her science officer called out, his scales pale with shock. I'm detecting energy readings that shouldn't be possible. They're ships. They're using gravitational manipulation on a scale we thought was theoretical." Zara nodded slowly. Of course they were. Humans had always excelled at turning theory into reality, especially when someone said it couldn't be done. Luna Base proved to be less of a base and more of a city, carved into the moon's surface. Their ship was guided to a massive docking facility that could have housed the entire Meridian diplomatic fleet with room to spare. As Zara led her delegation through the airlock, she found herself face to face with Fleet Admiral Chen and a group of human officers. Up close, the humans were even more imposing. Their higher gravity world had given them dense muscle mass and thick bones that made them look powerful even in their formal uniforms. "Welcome to Luna Base," Chen said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "The Council is waiting. Fair warning, they have questions. Lots of questions." The walk to the Council chamber was clearly designed to impress. They passed viewport after viewport showing Earth's military might, shipyards, training facilities, and what appeared to be weapon testing ranges that stretched for kilometers. The Council chamber itself was spartanly decorated, dominated by a massive holographic display showing real-time movements of Earth's fleets throughout their solar system. 12 admirals sat around a curved table, their uniforms representing different branches of Earth's military. High Admiral Vex, the central figure, spoke, an older human male with gray hair and scarred features. "I'm Grand Admiral Torres. You've traveled a long way to break a quarantine your own people imposed. We're very interested in knowing why." Zara stepped forward, activating her own holographic projector. The chamber darkened as she showed them the recordings of the entity, the lost fleets, the worlds going dark. "This entity appeared at the edge of our space 3 months ago," she explained. "It defies our physics, ignores our weapons, and consumes everything in its path. We've lost 3 full battle fleets trying to stop it. Nothing we have works against it." She paused, letting that sink in. "We quarantined humanity because you were too unpredictable, too aggressive, too willing to defy conventional wisdom. Now we need exactly those qualities." The human admirals exchanged looks. Torres leaned forward, his scared face thoughtful. "You're telling me that the mighty Meridian Empire, with all its advanced technology and thousands of years of civilization, can't handle this threat. But you think we can?" "Yes," Zara replied simply. "Because you do things differently. Where we see impossibility, you see a challenge. Where we respect the laws of physics, you treat them more like guidelines." A chuckle ran through the human admirals. Chen spoke up from her position near the door. "She has a point, sir. Remember the gravity drive. Every physicist said it was impossible until Dr. Wong decided to prove them wrong out of spite." Torres nodded slowly. "Show us everything you have on this entity. Every scan, every recording, every theory. Let's see what impossible thing we need to do this time." As Zara began transferring the data, she noticed something in the humans' expressions, not fear of the threat, but excitement. They looked like predators who had just spotted prey. She remembered something from the historical records. Humans had a saying about necessity being the mother of invention. Looking at their faces now, she realized they had it backwards. For humans, invention wasn't born of necessity. It was born of someone telling them something couldn't be done. The entity that threatened the galaxy was about to learn why the Meridian Empire had quarantined humanity. Not because they were too dangerous to join galactic civilization, but because they were too dangerous to let everyone else get comfortable. The massive holographic display in Luna Base's Strategic Command Center showed the cosmic horror as it consumed another star system. Admiral Zara Vex's scales had paled to an ashen gray as she watched, but the humans around her showed no signs of fear. Instead, they were smiling. "Look at that energy pattern," Dr. Sarah Wong said, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The physicist had been called in from Mars Research Division, and she hadn't slept in 3 days. "It's not random. Nothing in nature is random. Grand Admiral Torres nodded, his scared face illuminated by the hologram. The entity absorbs energy weapons, conventional matter, basically everything we throw at it. But there's something else going on here. Fleet Admiral Chen pointed to a particular section of the display. Every time it consumes something, there's a millisecond delay before absorption. Almost like it's analyzing what it's about to eat. Dr. Wong finished, her eyes bright with revelation. Which means it's not just a force of nature. It's scanning, processing, deciding. It's thinking. Zara watched in fascination as the humans bounced ideas off each other, building on each thought with a speed that made her inner membranes flutter. This wasn't the methodical, careful approach the Meridian Empire would have taken. This was controlled chaos, beautiful in its intensity. If it's thinking, Torres said slowly, it can be outsmarted. And if it's analyzing everything before consuming it, we can give it something it really doesn't want to digest. Chen finished, a predatory grin spreading across her face. Dr. Wong was already running simulations. We need to think bigger. Forget conventional weapons. What if we gave it bad data? Like feeding a computer corrupt files until it crashes. Zara found her voice. You want to give the cosmic horror indigestion. Better, Wong replied, not looking up from her calculations. We're going to give it a paradox, something that fundamentally contradicts its own existence. But for that, we need to understand exactly what it is. Torres turned to Zara. Your people have been fighting this thing defensively. We need to probe it, test it, find out what makes it tick. And for that, we need bait. Bait. Zora's scales rippled with concern. Something it can't resist, Chen explained. Something so packed with energy, it has to try to consume it. But when it does, she gestured to Dr. Wong. We'll be ready with sensors unlike anything your empire has seen, Wong continued. We developed them to study quantum singularities. They can analyze things that theoretically can't exist. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. Zara watched in amazement as humanity's war machines sprang into action. Ships were modified, weapons were recalibrated, and Dr. Wong's team worked on something they called a quantum paradox bomb, a weapon that somehow existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Your people said it couldn't be beaten because it defies physics, Chen told Zora as they watched the preparations. But that's where you went wrong. You can't beat something that defies physics by playing by the rules. So we're going to break them. The plan came together with frightening speed. A fleet of Earth's most advanced ships, led by the massive dreadnought Prometheus, would engage the entity. But unlike the Meridian ships that had faced it before, these vessels had been modified with Wong's experimental technology. We're not trying to destroy it, Torres explained to the assembled fleet commanders. We're trying to crash it. Think of it like a computer program that's encountered data it can't process. Either it shuts down, or it has to change its fundamental nature to continue existing. Zara noticed something about the human ships as they prepared for battle. Where Meridian vessels were elegant and streamlined, these were angular, aggressive, and bristling with weapons. But it wasn't just their appearance, it was their names. Prometheus, Pandora, Icarus, Hercules. Names from human mythology, all representing defiance of natural order. As the fleet prepared to depart, Dr. Wong approached Zora with a device she'd never seen before. This is a quantum entanglement communicator, she explained. It'll let you observe everything in real time, no matter where you are in the galaxy. We developed it last year because someone said faster-than-light communication was impossible. You created new physics because someone said you couldn't. Zara asked, her scales shifting in disbelief. Wong smiled. That's kind of our thing. The universe keeps telling us what we can't do, and we keep proving it wrong. This entity, this cosmic horror, it's just the latest in a long line of impossibilities we're going to make possible. The fleet departed with characteristic human efficiency, leaving Zara to watch through the quantum communicator as humanity prepared to teach a cosmic horror why they had been quarantined. It wasn't because they were too dangerous to join galactic civilization. It was because they were too dangerous to let galactic civilization become complacent. As she watched the fleet approach their target, Zara remembered an old human saying she'd found in their historical records. Necessity is the mother of invention. But watching them now, she realized humans had it backwards. For them, invention wasn't born of necessity. It was born of someone saying that's impossible, and humans taking it as a personal challenge. The cosmic horror was about to learn why that was a very, very bad idea. Through the quantum entanglement communicator, Admiral Zara Vex watched humanity's fleet approach the cosmic horror. The entity loomed before them, a void darker than space itself, consuming light and matter with equal indifference. But where Meridian ships had fled in terror, the human vessels advanced with purpose. All ships, battle formations, Fleet Admiral Chen's voice came through crystal clear, despite the impossible distance. Remember, we're not here to die gloriously. We're here to make this thing regret ever existing. The Prometheus led the charge, its massive form bristling with Dr. Wong's modified weapons. Behind it, the rest of the fleet spread out in an attack pattern that seemed chaotic to Zora's trained eye, but she had learned not to underestimate human tactics. Entity is reacting to our presence, reported the Prometheus's sensor officer. It's curious, just like Dr. Wong predicted. It's never encountered anything like our ships before. Chen's voice remained steady. Deploy the first wave of probes. Let's give it something to think about. Hundreds of small devices launched from the human ships, each one carrying what Dr. Wong had called a quantum paradox, objects that violated the basic laws of physics. The entity immediately moved to consume them, just as the humans had anticipated. Energy spike. Someone called out. It's analyzing the probes. Wait, something's happening. The void flickered, its perfect darkness showing hints of discord. Where before it had smoothly absorbed everything in its path, now it seemed to hesitate, its movements becoming erratic. That's it, Dr. Wong's voice cut in from her station on the Prometheus. The paradoxes are forcing it to process contradictory information. Every time it tries to consume one of our probes, it has to reconcile something that cannot exist with its own existence. The entity's response was immediate and violent. It lashed out with tendrils of pure darkness, trying to envelop the human fleet. But the ships were ready, their modified shields flickering with energies that made Zora's scientific instruments spark in protest. Second phase, Chen ordered. All ships, execute Operation Looking Glass. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, their ships arranging themselves in a complex geometric pattern. Energy began to flow between them, creating a web of light that seemed to both exist and not exist simultaneously. We're not just giving it paradoxes now, Dr. Wong explained, her voice tight with concentration. We're showing it its own reflection, twisted through quantum possibilities. Every time it tries to process what it's seeing, it has to acknowledge versions of itself that contradict its nature. The entity's movements became increasingly erratic. Where before it had been a perfect void, now it showed ripples and distortions, like a pond disturbed by too many stones. It tried to retreat, but the human fleet pursued relentlessly, their quantum web forcing the horror to confront its own impossible nature. It's working, Chen announced. But it's not enough. Time for the killing stroke. Dr. Wong. Initiating final phase, Wong replied. All ships, prepare to channel power to the Prometheus. We're going to show this thing what happens when you break the laws of physics without asking permission first. The Prometheus's main cannon began to glow with an energy that seemed to hurt Zora's eyes, even through the quantum communicator. The other ships connected to it through beams of pure energy, creating a weapon that shouldn't have been possible. You see, Wong's voice was almost gentle. This entity exists by breaking the rules of our universe. But it does it naturally, instinctively. We studied how to break those rules. We understood them. And understanding how to break the rules means understanding how to weaponize them. The Prometheus fired. The beam that erupted from its cannon wasn't energy or matter or any conventional force. It was pure contradiction, a weapon made of impossibility itself. When it struck the cosmic horror, the entity didn't explode or dissolve. Instead, it began to unravel. The weapon isn't destroying it, Wang explained as they watched. It's forcing it to observe its own paradoxical nature. To exist, it has to break the laws of physics. But to process our weapon, it has to obey those same laws. It can't do both. The entity's unraveling accelerated. Pieces of it began to fade from existence, not with violence or drama, but with the quiet finality of a logical contradiction resolving itself. The void that had consumed entire fleets and devoured worlds was being undone by its own impossible nature. Entity is beginning final collapse, reported the sensor officer. Its mass is converting to. I don't even know how to describe this. It's converting to possibility, Wang said softly. We didn't destroy it. We convinced it that it couldn't exist, so it's becoming something that can. The last of the cosmic horror faded away, leaving behind only a shimmering field of quantum potential that quickly dispersed into normal space. Where once there had been an unstoppable force of destruction, now there was only the quiet of space and a fleet of human ships, their weapons powering down. All ships report in, Chen ordered. Damage assessment. The reports came back one by one. Despite facing a force that had destroyed entire Meridian battle fleets, the human ships had suffered only minor damage. They hadn't tried to match force with force. They had simply changed the rules of engagement. As Zara watched the fleet prepare to return home, she finally understood why humanity had been quarantined. It wasn't because they were violent or unpredictable. It was because they refused to accept impossibility as an answer. They didn't just break the rules. They understood why the rules existed, and that made them far more dangerous than any mere rule breaker. The Grand Council chamber of the Meridian Empire had never been so crowded. Representatives from every major galactic civilization packed the ancient hall, their attention fixed on the human delegation standing before them. Admiral Zara Vex watched from her position near the speaking platform, her scales shimmering with anticipation. Grand Admiral Torres stood at the center, his scared face impassive as he faced the assembled leaders of galactic civilization. Fleet Admiral Chen and Dr. Wang flanked him, their dark uniforms standing out among the colorful robes and ceremonial armor of the alien delegates. 3 centuries ago, Torres began, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber, your civilizations decided that humanity was too dangerous to join galactic society. You placed warning beacons around our solar system and declared us quarantined. He paused, allowing a slight smile. We took it as a challenge. The holographic displays activated, showing the battle with the cosmic horror. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as humanity's fleets systematically unraveled what their combined civilizations had failed to even slow down. You saw us as dangerous because we refused to accept limitations, Torres continued. Because we treated universal constants as suggestions, because we looked at impossible problems and saw opportunities. You weren't wrong about us being dangerous. You were just wrong about what that meant. Dr. Wang stepped forward, her usual excited energy contained beneath a professional demeanor. The entity you faced wasn't just powerful, it was a fundamental violation of how reality works. You tried to fight it with conventional weapons because those were the rules you understood. We succeeded because we asked why those rules existed in the first place. The chamber erupted in murmurs as the implications sank in. Elder Mox, his scales now showing the deep blue of profound realization, raised his hand for silence. You didn't just defeat the entity, he said slowly. You changed our understanding of the universe itself. The weapons you created, the principles you discovered, they rewrite everything we thought we knew about physics. That's what humans do, Chen replied with a slight smile. We see walls as windows waiting to be opened. We look at the impossible and ask why not. And when the universe tells us something can't be done, we take it as a personal challenge to prove it wrong. The chamber filled with voices again, but this time the tone was different. Where before there had been fear of humanity's potential for violence, now there was something else. Curiosity, interest, and even excitement. A representative from the Arcturian Confederation, their crystalline form glowing with internal light, spoke next. The quarantine was meant to protect us from humanity's aggressive nature. But in doing so, we denied ourselves access to their unique perspective. Perhaps it is time to admit our error. Torres nodded. We're not asking to join your civilization anymore. We're offering to help you expand it. There are problems you haven't solved, questions you haven't answered, and frontiers you haven't crossed. Not because you couldn't, but because you accepted that they were impossible. Dr. Wong activated another hologram, showing the quantum communications network humanity had developed. This is just the beginning. We've learned how to bend space, twist time, and rewrite the rules of reality itself. Not through blind aggression, but through understanding. And we're willing to share that knowledge. Zara stepped forward then, her scales bright with emotion. Honored delegates, 3 months ago, I came to Earth seeking help against an impossible threat. What I found wasn't just a solution to our immediate problem. I found a species that shows us what we could become if we stop accepting limitations as absolute. The chamber fell silent as Elder Mox rose from his seat, his scales shifting to the deep purple of formal declaration. The quarantine of Earth was based on fear, fear of what humanity might become. Now we must face a different fear, the fear of remaining stagnant while the universe holds so many mysteries yet to be understood. One by one, the representatives of the galaxy's greatest civilizations stood. The vote was unanimous. The quarantine would end, not with the bang everyone had feared, but with the quiet acknowledgement that the galaxy needed humanity's unique perspective. As the ceremony concluded, Zora approached Torres, Chen, and Wong. "What happens now?" she asked. Wong's professional demeanor cracked into her familiar, excited grin. Now we start asking the really interesting questions, like why faster-than-light travel has to follow the rules it does, or why gravity works the way it works, or maybe," her eyes sparkled, "maybe we'll figure out how to make a star dance." "She's not joking," Chen added with a wry smile. "Someone told her it was impossible last week, so now she's determined to do it." Torres looked out over the assembled delegates, his scared face thoughtful. "You quarantined us because you thought we were too dangerous to join galactic civilization. You were right about us being dangerous. But danger isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to move forward." As the delegates began to disperse, discussing the implications of humanity's return to galactic society, Zara realized something profound. The galaxy had feared humanity would bring chaos to their ordered existence. Instead, humanity had shown them that true progress often required challenging the very rules they had taken for granted. The age of acceptance was over. The age of why not had begun.